Hey, Adam Hoeksema here from ProjectionHub. So Elon Musk has been diving into the SBA as part of his work in the DOGE department, the Department of Government Efficiency. So he said in a tweet that only 8% of SBA loans pay back. And that was, kind of a shocking thing to see for a lot of people because you would expect it to be a lot higher than that. How are SBA lenders surviving if only 8% of their clients are paying their loans back? And so that begged the question of, is that data reliable? Is what he just said, is that stat actually true? And so I wanted to dig into the SBA loan data and give you a few details with some data to back it up. And so I guess before I dive into that, a little bit of my background. I spent 12 years as an SBA lender. I made over 1,500 SBA loans during my time as executive director of an organization called Bankable. Now today I own ProjectionHub, where I help people create financial projections and business plans. A lot of times that is for SBA loans. So I guess I do have a horse in the race here. I like the SBA. It's been my career. And when I saw a stat that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me coming from Elon, I wanted to really dive into the data and see what we could find. So with that said, I'm going to pull up a dashboard that we built actually last year that takes the SBA publicly available loan data that they publish, and they just put in a big CSV file. And so you can take this data and you can sort and filter it yourself. We took that big CSV file, cleaned it up, got it into a Google Data Studio dashboard so we can sort and filter and play around with that data. And I wanted to show you a little bit of that data. Now, this specifically is looking at the SBA 7A loan program, which is the flagship loan program of the SBA. This is kind of where the most activity and most volume is. And so we're going to look at default data for the SBA 7A program. And, as it relates to whether this is a good risk for taxpayers, the SBA, and therefore you as a taxpayer, you are guaranteeing a portion of these loans. So 75 to 85%, the SBA will guarantee those loans. So if they do default, the SBA and you, the taxpayer, are going to reimburse the bank lender who ultimately made that loan 75 to 85% of the outstanding balance that was charged off for the defaulted. Okay, so the bank still has something to lose there, but the SBA is covering a portion of that. Okay, so Elon says only 8% of loans pay back. And this is the SBA 7A loan program data from 1991 to 2023. And we looked at, in this sample here, 1.3 million loans, 7A loans, and there were 185,000 roughly charge-offs, so defaults or charge-offs. And you can see that in this table, you can kind of see that broken down by business age. Now, for the most part, this is some new data fields that the SBA has asked lenders to provide. So it's really just in the last handful of years where they've started tracking, is the business a startup? Is it an existing business? Is it a change of ownership, meaning an acquisition loan? How old is the business? So for a lot of these loans, this answer is it's unanswered, right? So we don't have that detail. But for the more recent years, you can see some detail. And what you ultimately find is that, not surprisingly, the existing businesses, the acquisition loans, they tend to have a lower default rate than the startups in general, the newer businesses. But overall, the charge-off amount during this time period for the SBA 7A program was 9.07%. So it's almost the exact opposite of what Elon said. So instead of saying only 8% of loans pay back, it's actually only 9% of loans don't pay back. And so pretty big difference here. So where is Elon coming up with this stat where only 8% of loans pay back? I think it must be the PPP loan data, which during COVID, the SBA came out with the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. And the whole idea of that program was to not pay the loan back. And if you use a PPP loan to make payroll, then you didn't have to pay the loan back. So yeah, I'm guessing that 92% of clients, small businesses, used the PPP loan as they were expected and then didn't pay the loan back. And, probably 8% maybe didn't keep employees, didn't have payroll costs, and so they owed the money back. And so, it's just a very two different worlds here that we're seeing here. But I wanted to show some of this default data. We have a lot of different ways to kind of look at this. I did want to show this. I think is kind of interesting too. There is SBA loan charge-offs, kind of a trend, and you can see that in the 2008 financial crisis, it got pretty ugly. There was a lot of defaults and charge-offs of SBA loans, and the graph here is by the origination year. So for example, you can see this going up, and like this year, 2004, so loans originated in 2004 had a 19.84% default rate because they weren't probably paid off yet in 2008. Things hit the fan, and they had a much higher default rate. So now once you're getting into like 2009, 10, and after the banks started to become a lot more conservative, after that 2008 financial crisis, you see the default rate of the 2015 vintage, for example, just 6.45%. Now, a loan can default. Just because it defaults doesn't necessarily mean that the borrower doesn't pay the money back. So you could default and still end up paying the money back, but you could hit a technical default and still end up paying the money back. So there's still a little bit of a difference between whether it's a default and whether the government actually got paid back. So lots there, but I just wanted to address this issue. And if you can go to the SBA website and download the CSV file, millions of loans. There's be a couple different CSV files for different years, vintages, and by program. And you can do this on your own analysis and come up with the same data. So it's very clear. There's a column of whether it defaulted or not and the dollar amount that was charged off. So yeah, take that 8% that Elon's mentioning with a grain of salt. Had to include some special programming like the PPP program that was meant to not be paid back. And so it's a bit misleading here. Hope that helps. If you have questions about that, feel free to reach out, support@projectionhub.com. Thanks.